You remember those days at school? You'd be hanging out with your friends, talking about how Chrono from Chrono Trigger and Master Chief would be fighting some alien monster together, because that'd be so cool. Why don't they make a video game connecting every single video game that you like? And then you turn away from your, at the time, unknowingly awkward conversation and see that one kid that everyone doesn't really want to interact with. He got started attending school pretty recently, but he's had odd outbursts and the school bully targeted them near immediately. But something in your child brain makes you think that this kid's so weird, why would anyone ever want to talk to them? They say weird things, they eat bananas all wrong, they always get the pizza with the consistency of yogurt, and they smell kind of off. You see a teacher kind of pull them aside and away from the playground towards the inside of the school. So you turn back and catalog that as some kind of help they need. Now what if Master Sword was held by Master Chief? Kids can be incredibly direct about how they handle things they're not fond of. They don't see that kid as someone who is actually in desperate need of some kind of help. It takes years of learning and understanding people and how harsh life can be that you can finally connect the dots to understand that actually that weird kid had a terrible home life. The signs were there, we just couldn't see it at the time. In Growing My Grandpa by Yames, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right, I apologize, we get to see a particularly special case of one of those weird kids. Her name is Adrian, and she's not been participating in group activities, actively taking demerits. We, as a caseworker, also learn about Adrian's parents via parent-teacher conference notes. The parents are well learned but reticent. They're not really giving Adrian the attention she needs to flourish. From our understanding, we decide to go along with her imaginatory exploration of the basement. And we explore it gameplay-wise from her perspective. She elaborates on finding a pile of garbage bags and mirrors facing inwards into the bags. She removes it and finds something shooting out odd whiskers. She moves on from that. She discovers some of his research, though she doesn't wholly grasp it at her grade level, and attempts to recreate old experiments on making a being through intention and desire. She finds an image of her deceased grandfather and a doll, glues them together and sets them in a cage behind a door with countless notes about caring for a Whiskers. She sets Grandpa behind the cage and wishes him back. And our session with Adrian ends there for the week. And for us, it's tough to parse everything she described, but you can't always get everything about someone in a single session with talking to them. We move on to the next week where Adrian is a bit more confident in herself, though not thoroughly. We ask her more about Grandpa in the cage, and thus begins our actual gameplay of Growing My Grandpa. Grandpa requires enrichment. Like every creature, in order to sustain Grandpa, they need food, training, and communication. We first discover our materials for the aforementioned pillars of Grandpa through rummaging around in the garbage piles strewn throughout the basement. You can find strawberries, bread, and word cards to teach him, also occasionally uncovering research notes and excerpts that fill us in on more what's going on. Grandpa needs a healthy diet. So of course feeding him ancient and rock-hard food is the go-to strategy to getting him in a better mood and healthy. A good method is to check in on Grandpa before feeding him until he's full, and seeing how he is will give you a good idea on what kind of nutrients he needs. You have to show him the food first, having him sniff it and finding out whether it's palatable or not. But he'll eat most anything. Except anything that's genuinely inedible, in which case you kind of have to hide it in something he would eat. bearing in mind he'll throw up some of his insides, revealing key items to further explore the basement. But when don't we? After filling him up, now would be a good time to teach him some new words. Adorable. Him undulating to learn new words is also quite a sight for mine eyes to peep upon. It's rather interesting how quickly Grandpa learns. We also get a little bit of info regarding teaching particular words to him. Further insight on how the researchers were approaching Whiskers, or Grandpa. As we get to teach him more, he gets to be more articulate, which allows us to gather a bit more information about himself and how he's growing. He starts pretty rough, but as we teach him over time, he gets more and more elaborate and intricate. And this is kind of the gameplay loop of growing with Grandpa. You end each week having uncovered some new information about the research done and about what Grandpa used to be. But it's a rather short game, about 2 hours in length. I really do enjoy what it asks of me. But one of the bigger aspects of the game that really does captivate me is its writing. I'm not the most literate boy the world has seen. I try to capture a bigger meaning, but I always feel like I'm out of my depth in terms of articulation. I'm terrible about explaining things to people. That's something I can't say about what's happening here, though. The notes found about the research on Whiskers here feel almost exactly like something you would read from an actual study. It reads so convincingly like that I can't help but think that James himself is a researcher. I haven't read something this in-depth or thorough about something that doesn't exist in a game in a while, or at least any that I can recollect. It genuinely feels like I'm learning something new, but it's not real. Like I said, I can't really articulate things too well. I'm trying to get better, but I don't define myself as a teacher of any kind. Let me just read some samples here to y'all so you can really understand what I'm trying to get at here.
We have taken to calling it Whiskers, though of course some have interpreted it as hair or needles or quills, but Whiskers is more accurate, as the needles are really more like supersensory follicles or spines. The nerve nets distributed throughout the morphology of these spines resemble those of genus Hydra, but have myelin sheaths that are functionally the same as vertebrae. As we can see in the X-ray, each spine is laden with dense optical arrangements similar to compound eyes. The Hydra connection is assuredly worth investigating with regard to the organism's capacity for regeneration and anecdotal deathlessness. It certain is a robust enough creature to inspire marvel that is not untinged with fear.
And that's not just this game. James's other works also has this level of intricacy. They are a very good writer. You can also sense a deep level of interest in religious aspects from their work. There's something beyond our understanding and our grasp that they play at. It's all easy to get enamored with, just absorbed in trying to understand the intricacies of what's happening in Adrian's house, and whatever the hell this Whiskers thing was that her grandpa and his team were researching before Grandpa's death. And it's not just the writing that activates my neurons. The presentation just tickles my fancy something fierce. The dithering applied to these high-contrast dark rooms rendered wonderfully in CGI, reminiscent of older PC games, speaks to me in volumes. Then we have the actual design of Grandpa himself, and it is deeply haunting. The harsh contrast of shadows on Grandpa behind bars is such a well-done, terrifying sight. His burlap face as we directly interact with him feels much too coarse. It's all done so well. Then there's a light filter of a chromatic aberration waving effect that heightens the dramatic visuals on like the text. It blends so well. I've always been a fan of darker audio ambiance that has a theme of sorts. The low whirring sounds vibrating rhythmically, a deep synth sound playing coinciding, or a dark drone, like electricity deep in the back of your skull. I'm so weak to this style of audio. The music is so good. I've toyed with audio design a little bit here and there, and I loved playing with this kind of vibe. It feels almost primal, or maybe it's a way for me to work through my fear of, fear. The ambience does wonders to my soul, and I keep thinking about it. And it's not really a surprise that the sound effects and audio cues are also really excellently executed. They match the tone of the rest of the game very well. It's hard to not think about how Grandpa sounds when he repeats a new word back to you. Now, I'm not really going to discuss the endings in this video, as I do want you to figure out the game for yourself. I've already spent a lot of time elaborating on what this game does and is, and it being so short, it's hard to keep footage down before humongous key points in it. I'll just say that attaining the endings is pretty straightforward as long as you're paying attention to what's going on. But to kind of quickly encapsulate what I think this game is going for is that sense of isolation an abused child is dealing with, mixed in with beings beyond our comprehension and how these two go hand in hand with each other. The things you do for love. It's not an unfamiliar ground that it covers, but it goes about it in a very interesting and stylistic way. She is that weird kid. A weird kid who had a lot more going on in the background than any person can comprehend. I have a hard time not thinking about this game, so please check it out if you can. It's really short and goes for about $4.99 USD on Steam. Well worth the price of admission to me. And check out Yames' other work too, if this intrigues you. He can be found on Itch, as a lot of his work's there. And if you're feeling especially entranced, he also has a Patreon where you can see more of his work, even earlier than other people. So there we have it. I did want to talk a little bit more about these games, because I did take notes, and I didn't really even use them for this video, but there isn't a whole lot to talk about without going too far into the game, and I don't want to spoil too many things. I try to kind of gloss over a lot of details and try to give you just enough to maybe get interested. I hope that panned out. But either way, thank you for watching. If you've made it to this point, or even if you clicked on the video, hey, do what you need to do. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll figure out what to make and what video to look at next, what video to game to smile at or frown at. Who knows? Goodbye.